Aren't they here yet? You insisted, and we went out of our way to make this slot available. So, how are you going to take responsibility for this? This was for a live TV broadcast featuring Rachel's orchestra, a make-or-break moment for the company. But even as the event was about to start, the main performer was nowhere to be found. I'm so sorry. I don't need apologies right now, I need the performer. What's the plan? The broadcast starts in minutes. The director, Aaron, was visibly frustrated, and the tension in the hall was palpable. 3 minutes until we go live. Damn it! What should we do? I made up my mind and walked toward the stage. All we need is something memorable, right? Start the broadcast. I'll do it. And when I let the sound of my music fill the hall, every single person's eyes widened in astonishment. After all, My name is Joshua, 28 years old. I work for a small publishing company. At my branch, we primarily handle music magazines. To be honest, my performance at work hasn't been stellar. On top of that, I'm not the type to share much about my personal life, which has made it difficult to form strong relationships at work. As a result, I've become somewhat isolated. Though I occasionally feel lonely, I'm not mistreated, and the workplace itself is comfortable enough. Despite being in this relatively good environment, I recently heard some concerning news. Due to the declining popularity of print media, our company has been struggling financially. Suggestions to shift from print to digital have been made, but such a strategy would only mimic our competitors, resulting in the same repetitive outcomes. To address the situation, the company sent a deputy editor from headquarters. Her name was Rachel. Rachel had an impressive background, having worked on a wide variety of magazines, including those focused on music, sports, and art. She was brought in to help turn things around. Rachel had a refined, understated beauty and an inexplicable charm that captivated everyone. Her intellectual presence made her a role model for many of the female staff. Even I found myself at a loss for words when she greeted me directly. Her confident aura and striking appearance left me flustered. Rachel initiated a major project to revitalize the branch. It centered around an article featuring Japan's most promising young violinist. As expected, Rachel easily secured an appointment. If it had been me making the call, I'd have been turned away at the door. Her network is truly extraordinary. Since string instruments were my specialty, I accompanied Rachel to the music agency for the interview. The violinist in question, Henry, was about my age but carried an air of authority. It was clear that his sights were set not just on Japan but on the global stage, making the distance between us feel vast. Rachel began asking the pre-arranged questions that she had sent in advance. I recorded the conversation with a recorder while jotting down points that caught my attention. After the initial questions were completed, we would delve deeper into a few areas. I handed Rachel, the lead interviewer, a list of additional questions. If any of them piqued her interest, she would include them in the interview. While Rachel reviewed the questions, I checked the audio on the recorder and prepared to resume recording. Now, on to the next question. Could you share your secret to enjoying your music without being overly concerned about competition results? That was my question. Henry looked at Rachel with a hint of surprise. You noticed? That I don't really care about evaluations? Well, Rachel glanced at me. I nodded and addressed Henry directly. Yes. I've always felt your performances were aimed at the audience rather than the judges. Yet, you continue to win gold medals at competitions. To me, you represent the ideal artist. I'd love for you to share advice for those who are unable to play freely or are stuck in a slump. Interesting. Henry chuckled warmly. I'm glad my enjoyment comes through clearly. Let's see. I think the key is to be your music's and your instrument's biggest ally. Even if you make mistakes or the sound doesn't come out as you hoped, that music is unique to you alone. Cherish your sound and focus on nurturing its strengths. That's how I've approached practice. Even if you make mistakes. I recalled something. It happened 6 months ago at his Christmas concert. By any chance, during the Christmas concert 6 months ago, when the strings weren't sounding right, did you keep playing because you saw it as an opportunity? Henry's smile froze. He looked at me as though he'd seen a ghost and cautiously spoke. How do you know that? The tension in the sound was different than usual. There were several chances to switch to your backup violin, but you didn't. Instead, you used that tense sound to shape your performance. Later, at other concerts, I noticed you created a similar sound with a properly tuned violin. I thought maybe you liked it. But that's just the guess of an amateur. I'm sorry. I realized I had spoken too much based on speculation. It's incredibly rude to dig into someone else's mistakes. My inability to stop myself from pursuing what intrigues me is one of my bad habits. Amateur? Far from it. I feel like I've met someone who truly understands me. For some reason, Henry seemed genuinely delighted. Who could possibly be happy about having their mistakes pointed out? He must have an incredibly generous heart. Perhaps that's why I ended up saying more than I should. Normally, during interviews, I'm careful to avoid unnecessary comments. You're absolutely right. At that concert, I had tightened the strings more than usual. I'd been experimenting during practice and brought that setup to the stage. But, because of that, the hall was filled with an unusual sound. Something fresh and new. That's why I'd encourage others to enjoy music even in challenging circumstances. That's one of the beautiful aspects of music. The interview was originally scheduled for just 1 hour. However, Henry seemed eager to continue and generously gave us another hour of his time. After your question, Joshua, it was like Henry became a completely different person. His eyes were shining. Rachel praised me in the elevator after we finished the interview. I braced myself, expecting to be reprimanded for asking too many bold or off-target questions, and was caught off guard by her praise. I'm just glad Henry turned out to be such a kind person. That's part of it, but I think your question drew those words out of him. It was oddly specific. Do you have experience with music? Not really. As we exited the elevator and walked through the office lobby, a woman passing by called my name. Is that really you, Joshua? What? I turned toward the voice and, to my surprise, saw my ex-girlfriend from college standing there. Aurora. Wow, fancy meeting you here. Don't tell me you're applying for a position here? No, I'm here for an interview with Henry. Henry? Her overly familiar tone made me raise an eyebrow. Noticing my reaction, she smirked, seemingly pleased to explain. I'm his girlfriend. Ah. I see. He's incredible, isn't he? His violin skills are amazing, and he's so dedicated, unlike you. Ignoring Aurora's final disdainful remark, I asked, Aurora, why are you here? I work here as office staff. I silently speculated that this might be how Aurora met Henry, but before I could dwell on it, she was already eyeing Rachel up and down. Is this your girlfriend? No, she's my boss. Like I said, I'm here for work. I'm at a publishing company now. How much does she know about you? What? Stop it. That's out of line. I stepped in front of Rachel, blocking Aurora's view. Unbothered, Aurora shrugged. I was just trying to be helpful, you know? Letting her know that you're a loser. That's uncalled for. Is that so? Isn't that the perfect description for someone who walked away miserably? Rachel, let's go. Ah, yes. To avoid hearing anything else inappropriate, I quickly left the office. Aurora didn't follow us. She's someone you know, right? Yes. I was thinking the same thing during Henry's interview, but who exactly are you, Joshua? What am I? That's something I'd like to know myself. I'm your subordinate, Rachel. Just an ordinary office worker, nothing more, nothing less. I see. Sorry for asking such a strange question. No, it's fine. Sensing I didn't want to talk about it, Rachel didn't push the subject further. Rachel gathered a wealth of exclusive information during Henry's interview, information no other publication had. Excited by the potential to create a magazine that would captivate readers, she eagerly began writing the article. It was remarkable how hard she was working to revive our branch, even though it wasn't her direct responsibility. I'm just as invested in this company as she is. Beyond Henry's feature, there are plenty of other compelling topics to cover. If we keep leaving everything to her, I'll never be able to hold my head high after we recover. Motivated by this thought, I decided to take on interviews with other violinists as well. The magazine featuring Henry's interview turned out to be a big hit. Sales were slow at first, but after Henry's fans started sharing on social media that this article is a must-read, sales steadily picked up. Rachel, always quick to catch social media trends, placed a reprint order early, ensuring additional copies arrived at stores just before they sold out. Even if there's demand, people can't buy something that isn't in stock. On the other hand, misjudging the timing could result in excess inventory. Rachel's judgment was spot on. This time, it's also about boosting our magazine's visibility, so we have to be bold. Rachel, calmly reviewing the profit graphs, gestured for me to come over and pointed to a section of the article. This section, where you interviewed Henry, it's been very well received. People are saying it's rare for him to speak at such length. He does have a reputation for being quiet, doesn't he? Yes. I'm glad it contributed to the sales. Henry reached out afterward, saying he had a great time. It's not often we hear something like that, so I was surprised. That's wonderful to hear. Off that momentum, I want to tackle our next project. Joshua, will you help me? Of course, but what's the plan? Television. Television? It was a word I should have been familiar with, yet for some reason, I couldn't quite picture it. That's how distant it felt from the work we do. Television, as in broadcasting? Yes. To promote our magazine, I want to air a live string quartet performance. I have connections with both the violinists and the TV crew, so I plan to ask for their cooperation. Do you think it'll go that smoothly? Everything's a challenge, Joshua. You just have to try. She was right, being overly cautious would make it impossible to break out of our current situation. If I want to protect this company, I need to broaden my perspective, just as she says. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. A senior colleague sitting across from Rachel looked at me with surprise. It was probably unusual to see me take the initiative. Just a few weeks ago, I would have simply said, "Sure, good luck with that," and stayed completely uninvolved. Joshua, I heard about it. You offered to help Rachel with the string quartet project, didn't you? The next day, Timothy, the editor-in-chief, spoke to me in a hushed tone. Yes, Rachel's determination was so inspiring that I couldn't help myself. It seems pairing you with her was the right decision. With a gentle, almost fatherly look, he patted my shoulder, as if watching his son grow up. Don't overdo it. If you pursue what you enjoy, the results will naturally follow. Keep it up. Thank you, I will. Timothy's encouragement wasn't overwhelming, instead, it felt like a reassuring push forward. Then came the day of the performance. The project we had arranged was set to air during a regional Saturday midday news program, featuring a live performance by world-renowned violinists. The studio announcer would introduce the string quartet while promoting our music magazine, followed by a 10-minute live performance. Thanks to the promotion by both our company and the violinists, social media was buzzing with excitement as the program began. Comments like, "This is so exciting," and "A live performance? What a treat," flooded the platforms. But inside the concert hall, filled with staff and collaborators, I found myself bewildered by the situation unfolding before me. Still no word from Kevin? Aaron, the frustrated director, asked Rachel without hiding his irritation. No. He hasn't responded to calls or messages, she replied. What about his family? Kevin's family is overseas, and he's only back in the country for a few weeks. One of the violinists scheduled to perform hadn't shown up, even 30 minutes past the call time. To make matters worse, we couldn't get in touch with him. The program had already started, and the countdown to the live performance was relentless. If necessary, we can consider switching to a trio. It wasn't ideal, and it would be unfair to the other violinists, but they could likely adapt to the sudden change in the program. However, Rachel's proposal was immediately rejected. That's not an option. We promised a string quartet, it's in the program listings and on the station's social media. Besides, Kevin is the most high-profile performer. Do you know how many complaints we'd get if he doesn't appear? If you can't get him here, you'll need to find someone with equal star power. There's no way we can do that in time. Listen. Aaron crossed his arms and let out a deep sigh. You pushed for this slot, and we made room for you. Now, there's no rehearsal, no backup plan, and if you can't recover from this, how will you take responsibility? The only reason we agreed to this was because of the producer's connection. I'm so sorry. I don't need apologies. I need Kevin. Aaron wasn't wrong. However, none of us had anticipated that Kevin, always punctual and reliable, would find himself in such a situation. Some were even voicing concerns that he might have been in an accident. Rachel kept calling Kevin over and over again. She also tried reaching his assistant, who had returned to Japan with him, but there was still no response. Then, a staff member approached Aaron. 3 minutes until we're live. Tell the studio to stall. They're saying they can't delay any longer. Damn it. The tension in the hall was nearing its breaking point. On social media, comments like "When will the performance start?" and "How long are they going to stall with other segments?" reflected growing frustration and anxiety. A trio seemed like the only option left. Just as everyone resigned themselves to having the announcer offer an excuse, I slipped my smartphone back into my pocket. This was Rachel's project, something she had worked so hard on for the sake of the company. It was also our chance to turn things around. I wasn't heartless enough to let it all fall apart. Steeling myself, I approached Rachel and Aaron on trembling legs. The key is creating buzz, right? Wait, Joshua? I stood in front of the viola player, a woman who was already in position for the performance. It's been a while. Joshua here. Oh, Joshua? Yes, I'm sorry, but the situation is urgent. May I borrow your viola? Of course, you can borrow it. With the viola graciously handed to me, I approached the cameraman near the stage and whispered something into his ear. There was no time to explain anything to Aaron. This is the plan. Start the broadcast, I said firmly. Are you serious? Aaron asked, skeptical. You'll see once you hear it. If I fail, I'll take full responsibility. I raised the viola and prepared to play. The cameraman signaled the start of the broadcast. What are you doing? Aaron's voice of protest overlapped with the sound of my viola. The moment the melody filled the hall, Aaron froze as if time had stopped. The camera crew, the TV staff, and even our company employees, all of them, stared at the stage without daring to interrupt my performance. What an exquisite sound! Someone murmured. I didn't know a viola could produce such a vibrant tone. Who is he? I'm not sure. He works with us, but... Both Aaron and Rachel stood speechless, their faces reflecting their astonishment. I glanced at the other violinist and the cellist, signaling with my eyes. They joined in, blending seamlessly with my melody. Now it was a trio. Kevin was still absent, but judging by the reactions in the hall, it seemed we could pull this off. My hands moved instinctively, producing the exact tones I intended. How long had it been since I last played in a concert hall? The resonance, the depth of the sound, was so comforting. I had to snap out of it. I was getting lost in the moment. This was television. I needed to capture their eyes and ears. The camera never wavered, keeping its focus on me. It seemed to be going well. For 10 minutes, I played, syncing with the other two and ensuring every note resonated perfectly for the audience beyond the screen. With a final coordinated breath, we struck the last note, letting it ring out as if it could reach the other side of the world. A moment of silence followed, then applause erupted across the hall. As I bowed, the announcer stepped onto the stage and came to my side. That was an incredible performance. Since Kevin was unexpectedly unable to join us today, we had Joshua step in to perform in his place. The announcer transitioned smoothly, as if my performance had been part of the original plan. Thank you for joining us as a special guest today. I must admit, this is the first time I've heard your name. Where do you usually perform? The microphone was pointed at me in front of the camera. My role wasn't over yet. I had to leave an impression strong enough to compensate for Kevin's absence. I've been on hiatus from performing, and today marks my return. Perhaps some of you might recognize the name Richard, my father. As soon as I spoke his name, a ripple of astonished whispers spread throughout the hall. The announcer's expression mirrored the crowd's shock before she quickly regained her composure. Are you referring to that legendary violinist, Richard? The one who passed away 10 years ago? Yes. My father was acquainted with Kevin, and today, I stepped in on his behalf at the request of the program. The part about my father and Kevin being close was true. The part about Kevin asking me to perform was a lie. I came up with a plausible explanation and managed to get through the moment. Since the broadcast was already running behind schedule, they didn't dig too deeply into my story, and the live coverage eventually came to an end. As the announcer wrapped up with, "And now, back to the studio," a wave of relief swept through the venue. Some people were so exhausted that they collapsed into their seats, leaning back for support. Thank you, Catherine. After the broadcast ended, I went to return the viola. Despite having her moment on stage taken away, Catherine greeted me with a warm smile. I'm so glad I got to hear you play again, Joshua. I heard you'd quit music, but your skill hasn't faded one bit. Well, I've been practicing occasionally, just to keep in shape. I see. I hope we can play together again someday. Joshua. Was what you said earlier true? Rachel and Aaron approached me in a rush. I apologized for my unilateral decision to take over the broadcast, but Aaron shook his head vigorously. Are you kidding? I had no idea you were Richard's son. This is going to be huge. We need to plan a special feature with you next. He handed me his business card, and I gave him a vague nod in response. I knew that revealing my background would completely change how people treated me. That's why I hated doing it, but for the sake of the company, I had no choice. Still, I owed Rachel and the rest of the team an explanation. Rachel, everyone. I'm sorry for keeping this from you. Your performance was incredible, Joshua. Is that why your interview with Henry felt so real and compelling? Maybe so. I don't want to pry too much into your past, but... No, I should explain. As the TV crew packed up their equipment, I began to share the story of my father and my past. My father, Richard, was a world-renowned violinist. Thanks to his talent and his personal guidance, I grew into what people called a prodigy violinist. I was even labeled a genius. Right before graduating from college, I had planned to join my father's agency. But then, he passed away in a tragic car accident. Suddenly, the music world and the agency became chaotic, and in the midst of it all, I lost my ability to express myself through music. Doctors diagnosed it as emotional trauma. but no one in the industry understood or even tried to understand. Aurora, who was my girlfriend at the time, dismissed my struggles entirely. She once said, "Do you even realize how hard it is to listen to your awful playing? I wonder what your father would think of you now." I realized she was only interested in me and my father's name and reputation. Already at my lowest, we argued, and she ultimately left me. Losing her, my emotional anchor, was devastating, but it didn't stop there. The reporters who had once covered every concert of my father's and mine began treating me differently. After concerts and competitions, the interviews were never about my performance but instead focused solely on my relationship with my father. Asking how I felt performing without him, what I would say to him in his grave about the competition results, or what our conversations were like when he was alive. Instead of caring about my passion for music, they only wanted tear-jerking stories about my father. Before long, they even openly suggested creating a feature focused entirely on him, leaving me in disbelief. One claimed it was to honor his memory, but if they truly cared, they wouldn't have seen this as an opportunity for content. I grew tired of the media's attempts to exploit my father and me for their own gain. Every time they brought up my father, I was reminded that he was no longer here. I wanted them to stop asking, to stop making me relive the moment I heard about his death. One day, I realized that by continuing to play music, I was giving the media opportunities to exploit me. If that was the case, I thought, I might as well quit the violin altogether. No one wanted to listen to my music anymore anyway. So, I stepped away from the world of violin and made it a point to avoid talking about myself as much as possible. As long as no one knew I was Richard's son, I could avoid the pain. But having devoted my life to the violin, I had no idea how to live without it. I didn't know how to survive without the one thing I'd always relied on. That's when Timothy, the editor-in-chief of my current company, reached out to me. He had covered many of my father's concerts and was the only journalist who continued to care about me after my father's death. Thanks to him, I was able to learn a new skill and build a career, feeling deeply grateful to both the company and Timothy. However, to hide my background, I avoided talking about myself, which created a constant distance between me and those around me. And my fear of slipping up kept me living that way. Ah, so that's how it was. Thank you for sharing, Rachel said, nodding in understanding. The other staff members also looked at me with kind expressions. When I first joined the company, Timothy had told me, "You can talk about it when you're ready. Everyone will accept you." But I couldn't fully believe him. Now, I found myself able to talk about it, thanks to the guilt I felt for hiding in the shadows for so long. The courage I gained during the live performance, and Rachel's ever-optimistic outlook, which inspired me. But are you okay? Since you talked about your father on TV, things around you might get hectic again. That might happen, I admitted, but it's fine. If it helps promote our products, I'm ready for it. Besides, with everyone here supporting me, I feel like I can handle anything. Is that too much to say? No, I think that's a wonderful mindset. Exactly, and if any insensitive reporters show up again, we'll make sure to send them packing. Their words of encouragement filled me with gratitude. Thank you. But honestly, I'm at a place now where I can even share my memories of my father. Keeping his story alive might not be such a bad thing. Maybe we could even feature an article about me in our magazine. I surprised myself by saying that. Perhaps it was because I'd rediscovered the joy of sharing music with others during the performance. Now, I felt like I could convey not only my father's story but also my own music. Even working in publishing had not been in vain. "Joshua, it's been a while," a voice called out. I turned to see Henry waving at me from across the room. "I came to watch the performance because I knew one of the performers, but your music truly moved me. While your sense of pitch and style might be inherited from your father, I think the sound you create is uniquely your own." "Henry, thank you." "No, thank you for such a wonderful performance. Why didn't you just perform from the start?" trying to play the hero?" A sharp voice came from behind Henry. It was Aurora, who had likely followed him. "In the end, you only managed because of your family name. Don't get too cocky, or you might end up humiliated like before." "Aurora, why are you saying that?" Henry scolded her. But Aurora didn't back down. "Someone has to keep him grounded, Henry. If he gets too full of himself and accidentally gains some popularity, it might overshadow you. That's not your concern." "Oh, but as his girlfriend, it's only natural to think about the future, isn't it?" "Listen." Henry pressed his temples as if battling a headache. "Did you even listen to his performance? Do you think he's the kind of person to flaunt his abilities? If you actually listen to his music, you'd know that's not who he is. You're supposed to be someone involved in music, aren't you? And if my reputation takes a hit, that's on me, not Joshua. Besides..." The words that followed left us stunned. "You keep acting like you're my girlfriend, but I've told you multiple times I don't feel that way. Haven't you understood?" "What? You're just saying that to save face, right?" "No, I'm not. Please, give it up already." It turned out that Aurora was only Henry's self-proclaimed girlfriend. Watching someone get rejected so openly wasn't exactly pleasant. Feeling a bit awkward, we managed to defuse the situation and move on. As for what happened afterward, Aurora apparently couldn't let go of Henry. Being a longtime superfan of his and taking advantage of their shared workplace, she continued to follow him obsessively, to the point where her behavior resembled stalking. Eventually, it escalated to a police matter, leading to her dismissal from the agency and a restraining order being issued against her. It seems her infatuation with Henry stems solely from his fame as a renowned violinist. Just like with me, Aurora was only interested in the status and recognition that others achieved through their efforts. It seemed it was time for her to face reality. I wrote an article about myself and my father. In it, I openly shared how the media's fixation on my relationship with my father, rather than my music, had made me reluctant to talk about myself, and how the recent live broadcast gave me the courage to change that. The magazine, already on fire due to the live broadcast, saw unprecedented sales, with reprint after reprint, achieving record-breaking numbers in the company's history. The first person to reach out after reading the article was Kevin. He explained that on his way to the performance, an unusual noise was detected on the train, and he, along with his assistant, ended up trapped inside a tunnel for hours during inspections. With no signal and no way to leave the train, he had been helpless and sincerely apologized for the situation. As an apology, Kevin and I held a joint concert, and our company was granted exclusive rights to the interview. With this success and gradually restored visibility, the company managed to recover, and all our magazines continued to achieve strong sales. Meanwhile, as my name inevitably became recognized as a violinist, I found myself increasingly busy with performances. Although I should probably devote myself entirely to mastering the violin, I love the company and enjoy listening to the stories of others in the music world, so I've managed to negotiate a way to balance both. As a result, I can't be at the office every day, but Timothy, Rachel, and the rest of the team remain incredibly understanding and supportive. Rachel, in particular, has been a tremendous support for me, both personally and professionally. She told me she admires the courage I showed in overcoming my past trauma for the sake of others. But in truth, it's her optimistic and forward-thinking nature that has saved me, so I'd say the feeling is mutual. When I said that, she laughed and said, "Then we're perfect for each other, aren't we?" I've come to realize that it's not status or talent, but admiring someone's character and striving through effort that leads to personal growth. And with this understanding, I am determined to continue living with music, aspiring to one day become someone as remarkable as my father, leaving my name etched in the hearts of many.